Welcome to People Doing Good for Others. Good morning. This is People Doing Good for Others, where we praise and honor and celebrate the lives of those who are truly making significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York. I'm grateful for this opportunity and to thank our sponsors, Wilkes Communications, RiverStreet Productions, and 100.9 WIFM. Our featured guest today is Dr. Donna Cotton. She's a career educator, grew up in Florida. She's a significant leader in the Wilkes County school system, soon to be the chief academic officer. She believes in lifelong learning, and what a great tribute and a person who gives and cares and shares. And it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Gary.
Donna.
Thank you.
Tell us about growing up in Florida and riding a bicycle everywhere and some of those things about home.
Okay. Well, home is Melbourne, Florida. Actually, I live across the river from Melbourne, or lived in a small town called Indialantic, and it was a very close community and very suburb-like. Houses real close together, but the nice part about that was that we rode our bikes to school every day, as I told you earlier, from first grade through ninth grade, my elementary and junior high years, rode my bike to school every day, and it was a community thing. You would, first thing in the morning, all you'd see were bikes on the road, kids riding their bikes to school. There weren't too many cars taking kids to school, and only a few buses. So that was a privilege that I had growing up in such a great community as that, and loved school, loved being at school and learning. That was a big part of my family. I come from a large family, and education was important to my parents, for us to always be learning, and we kind of listened to our parents and did what we were told, but I think we all enjoyed school, my brothers and sisters and I.
In some of our correspondence, you mentioned maps, globes,
Yes.
questions and answers. Get into that a little bit.
Okay, growing up, I have 5 brothers and sisters, so there were a lot of us in the house, and my parents both worked full-time jobs, and I particularly remember at dinner time, there might be questions that one of us kids would ask, and the answer almost was always, well, look it up in the encyclopedia, or go and look at the map. We had a big map of the world on the wall in our house, and we had a globe, and that was one of our favorite things, was to look things up on the map or on the globe, or get out an encyclopedia to read about what it was that we had a question about, and then that often led to looking at other things. And I think that was, whether my parents knew it or not, they were encouraging us to be learners and to think about our questions and to find answers. And that's continued with me through my life. I want to be a learner and find the answers to my questions.
And you visited some in the summers in Deep Gap?
Yes, I did. I made a friend in junior high school whose parents bought a summer property in Deep Gap, and when she came up during the summers, I came up a couple of times, spent a week or so with her, and loved it. I had been to many other places, but never the mountains of North Carolina, and I just thought it was so beautiful. That was just different from the flat beach land of Florida, especially. And we had lots of fun playing in the creek. I was about 13, 14 years old. We would play in the creek. Helped her father and mother do some construction on the house, and she eventually moved permanently there and went to high school in Wilkes County, and again came up and visited her a few times in the summer, and realized Appalachian was a college that was close by, and then I was starting to look at colleges, so that really pulled my interest to this part of the state.
You met your husband?
I did actually meet him when I was still in high school, and we corresponded, and back in those days, you didn't have cell phones, and usually you had to write a letter or make long-distance phone calls, which our parents didn't really want us to do. But that was kind of a small driving force to wanting to go to Appalachian State University when I came to applying to colleges. So that's where I ended up.
How about the calling to teach?
Well, I loved playing school when I was younger. I think a lot of little girls do when they're younger, like to play school, and that was one of my favorite things to do. But I took a couple of courses in high school that were, well, an accounting course and a typing course, and I felt like I wanted to do something in the business world. So I didn't initially pursue teaching. When I got to Appalachian, I started out as a business major, but quickly changed after my first semester to business education, because then I realized I could combine some of my brain sense about business and numbers to working with kids, which was really what I thought I wanted to do, was be working with children or young people. I wasn't thinking real little kids at that time, but with young people. And I thought about the business ed teachers I had in high school and the English teachers who were my most favorite teachers in high school, and I knew that that's kind of where I wanted to be.
So you go to Appalachian, and your first job as a professional?
Was at, well, my very first one was when I finished my student teaching at North Forsyth High School, and they hired me to finish out the year at North Forsyth, and that was a big learning curve for me. It was a very urban school at that time, and it still is, and a large school, very diverse, and there were a lot of challenges just being in a big school like that. When I got married that summer, and we were living in Wilkes County, and wasn't sure I was going to find a job, and then found out that Wilkes Central High School was looking for a business ed teacher, and I had just graduated a year earlier, so went and applied and got to work with Dr. Alexander Irwin at Wilkes Central High School for my first teaching position, and loved it. Really respected Dr. Irwin as a school leader, made some great friends who are now getting ready to retire, but loved Wilkes Central. It was a great place to be.
Okay. And so just kind of go on several years of your career and
Sure.
how things transpired, if you will.
Sure. When I left Wilkes Central because I had become a mother and decided I wanted to stay home with my son, or with our son, for a little while, and was able to do that. So I stayed home with him until he was about 5 years old, and he started kindergarten at Millers Creek Elementary School. And so I wasn't quite ready to go back to work yet, and I mentioned this once before, that I tried to volunteer every day at Millers Creek Elementary School, and the wonderful Miss Norma Jean Burnett, his kindergarten teacher, said, "Donna, you can't come to school with him every day. You can pick one day to volunteer, and that will be your day." So I did that, and but then decided, well, I'll substitute a little bit. So I got a good taste of elementary school, and at that time, a teacher assistant position became open at Millers Creek for a second grade teacher assistant. And so I did that for a year and a half, and loved it, loved being able to work with young kids, and I hate to say it, but not having the responsibility of the teacher. I got to do so much with children and not have to have the stress that some teachers have to face. But it was a good experience for me, and I did that, and I tutored as well at Millers Creek. And then one day, as I was out in the car line at Millers Creek, as most teacher assistants are in the afternoon, or this was the morning actually, Steve Marie drove up, dropping off his sons to school. And Steve and I had worked together at Wilkes Central High School. And he just said, and he had just become the principal of West Wilkes High School at this time. And he said to me, "Donna, aren't you ready to come back to teaching yet?" And I said, "I just might be." And he said, "Well, I need to interview you because I have a business ed position." And so I ended up getting a position at West Wilkes High School, and spent 10 fabulous years there, made some wonderful teacher friends, enjoyed the leadership of Mr. Marie as our principal, and then when he left to go to Wilkes Central as principal, Mr. Hal Gatewood finished out my time there. Yeah, and both of them great leaders, and I learned so much from both of those men, and really appreciate my time with them as the school leader, and again, the friendships I made at West High with those teachers there, and the kids that I got to teach, that I was privileged to teach, just have touched my heart. When I see them now and they remember me, makes me very happy.
You were talking about Adam Foster here a minute ago.
Yes.
That was while you were there?
Yes, he was one of my students in my computer applications class, and proud to say that he was one of my many favorite students. I had lots of favorite students. Right. All of them are my favorites.
Okay. And then let's talk about your husband.
Okay.
His name, and in law enforcement and how that is as a wife and
Sure.
a little bit.
Right after we got married, my husband Doug became a deputy with Wilkes County Sheriff's Office and had retired a few years ago after 30 years with the Sheriff's Office. He is I guess a career law enforcement officer. He got his bachelor's in criminal justice and then a master's in, I want to make sure I say this right, public policy. I hope I said that right.
Okay.
But has always, that's just been his life, has been law enforcement. And it's, as a spouse of a law enforcement officer, it's hard because, you know, there are dangers out there. And even back then there were dangers out there, even though it seemed to be quiet little Wilkes County. There were things that happened that, you know, are always cause for concern. But he was proud of being part of the Wilkes County Sheriff's Office. He is a very strong believer in law enforcement and doing the right thing. And I'm very proud of what he's done for Wilkes County. He retired as the chief deputy. When he retired, he was chief deputy to Sheriff Shue, but worked under Sheriff Fred Myers and then Sheriff Dane Maston, and then finished up his years at the Sheriff's Office under Chris Shue. So I'm very proud of what he's accomplished, and he's always supported me in everything I wanted to do. So,
you mentioned once about being a certified shorthand teacher.
Yes, that's how old I am, Gary.
Let's talk about that a little bit,
Okay.
about how things have changed, and that's everybody has a computer.
Yes, things have changed a great deal since I was at Appalachian and got my education degree. But as a business ed teacher, I had lots of different options of things that I could teach, and one of the options was shorthand at that time, and I became a certified shorthand teacher going through the coursework to do that, and I loved it. I don't know, I'm ashamed to say I'm not sure I could still write shorthand. I still can recognize a lot of shorthand writing, but I would struggle. It's like a different language, but thought that would be an extra thing for me to have on my resume that might get me a job one day. But we still had typewriters back then too, and not many computers, so it was a different world. But it taught me, you know, you always want to provide opportunities for yourself, and that was an opportunity I was hoping to provide for myself one day.
Dr. Donna Cotton, tell us about the transition into administration.
Sure. While I was a teacher at West High, I was lucky enough to be in some leadership roles. I was our department chairperson, I was the school improvement team chairperson, and Steve Marie talked to me many times about being a leader, and actually it was one of the ones who encouraged me to go back and get my principal certification. And I did that, and not really thinking that I really ever wanted to be a principal. It wasn't really on my radar. I enjoyed what I was doing, but he encouraged me, and then Mr. Gatewood also encouraged me once he became our principal. And I had the opportunity, Dr. Laws was the superintendent at that time, and he called me and said, you know, we have some changes happening, and the assistant principal at East Wilkes Middle School is moving into a principalship, and the school year had already started. So he asked me if I would be interested in going and talking to Jody Weatherman, who was then the principal at East Wilkes Middle School. And I did, and Jody and I feel like have a lot of the same personality traits and hit it off real well, and she offered me the job as assistant principal at East Middle. And so luckily it was the year after my son graduated high school. He went to West High, and I was fortunate enough to be there through his years, which was something that made me happy. I'm not so sure it made him happy all the time, but it made me happy to be close by him. And I felt it was a good time for a transition, a good time for a change, that, you know, my life was kind of going in maybe a little different direction as far as my profession. So I accepted the job as assistant principal at East Wilkes Middle School, and was so lucky to be there for 2 years as assistant principal. A very special school and special people and students there.
How about the cohort and the Gardner Webb experience and those, the doctorate, and
Yes.
you even spoke of how proud you think your mom and dad would have been for you to have that degree.
Yes.
I believe that.
Well, that while I was assistant principal at East Wilkes Middle School, I found out, knew some folks who were going through that doctoral program and had heard a lot about it, and decided I'd just go to an information session and see if it was something I was even interested in doing, and then if I could afford to do it, because it would cost money. And went, and I was just
now,
really
did you have your
intrigued.
master's at
I
this
did have my
time?
master's,
Already?
yes. Yes,
Okay.
I'd already received my master's.
Okay.
And that was in middle grades education with a concentration in reading. I did that shortly after I had graduated with my bachelor's.
Okay.
So I decided I would pursue the doctoral program, and then found out that some other folks from Wilkes County who I knew were also going to pursue the same doctoral program in ed leadership. And it was Jody Weatherman, Dion Stocks, Susan Blackburn, Wesley Wood, and John Worley, and myself made 6 of us. So there were 6 of us in a cohort together from Wilkes County. And what was so wonderful about that was the opportunity to ride together in the car down to Winston-Salem. We met every weekend on Friday night and all day Saturday, and being able to have professional conversations, personal conversations, and just some stress relief from our doctoral work, and talk about what we were doing in our courses was just an invaluable experience for me. They were all principals or at higher levels in central office, some of them at that time, and I was still an assistant principal when we started our cohort, so I could sit back as an assistant principal and listen to their stories of being principals. And
Now,
how they
cohort
problem
means a
solved.
group,
A
right?
cohort means a group, so we stayed together as a group and took all of our courses together. And that was just, like I said, just a very special time, being able to share everything with some friends and colleagues and get some real professional advice and insight along the way. It was invaluable to me.
How about Dr. Don Martin?
Oh, Dr. Don Martin is I would consider a mentor. He was the former superintendent of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and he was our instructor for several of our doctoral classes. And we just like to sit back and listen to him talk, because he could just talk about so many things in leadership from the district level, and how it impacts what you do in schools, and how what happens in schools impacts the district level back. And just he's so smart about all of those things. He knows he's got a finger on what's happening in education still. We still keep in contact with him, and always giving good advice and direction, and his opinions about things to me matter, because he knows. He's been around for a long time in education in North Carolina, and he's got some history behind him and a wealth of knowledge. Really great person.
Dr. Cotton, tell us about what you've been doing the last 2-3 years when you've been in total administration in the central office. What have you been doing?
I started out as the director of secondary education, which was my primary focus was working with middle and high school principals and supporting them in whatever they need in supporting those schools. Helping them to understand directives or policies coming down from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, or even from the General Assembly, some general statutes that affect us in education. So as my primary role in that, in my opinion, was to serve them and help them understand what they needed to do to make sure their schools were compliant with whatever general statutes were out there, and also how best to direct their schools. After a couple of years of doing that, we had some changes, and I moved into the role of the Director of Testing and Accountability, which now not only am I trying to support middle and high school principals in their schools, but also elementary schools and principals with understanding their obligations as far as testing and accountability measures, and helping them understand all the data that they get back from their test scores and how that impacts their school performance grades, and how their school report cards look and are read by the public. Just trying to support them in those areas, and I see that as my role altogether in the central office, is to serve the principals in the schools and make sure that they have the information they need to be successful as school leaders and successful for their schools.
Who's Ann Langford?
Anna Lakeford is a good friend. I've known her for a long time, but professionally, she has been the Associate Superintendent of Wilkes County Schools for many years. I don't want to say how many because I'm not sure I have the right number.
Okay.
I think it's 11 years, but it may not be the right number. But as long as I've been in the central office, that's been her role. And she has been a mentor to me as far as anything district level or central office. She has helped me understand how to work with principals, how to work with the public, how to work with superintendents, and has just been a great role model for me, seeing that I'm kind of filling her shoes as she retires at the end of June. When I move into the Chief Academic Officer position, it will be very similar, if not identical in some ways, to the things that she was doing as Associate Superintendent. So she, again, has been a great role model. She is a very smart lady and has so much knowledge of education in general, education in North Carolina, the laws, the policies that affect us in education, and has helped me understand how important it is to stay on top of all of those things to be able to best support the schools.
How often do principals and the leadership team, do you come, what is a meeting like? Tell us
Sure.
about when you're there in the boardroom and you have one of these meetings.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, we meet as a group of administrators once a month, and that is all principals and then all directors.
System principals?
No, this is just principals for the
principals, okay,
administrators
okay,
meeting, yes.
okay.
Some assistant principals might come if their principal can't be present to take notes and to know what's going on. But it's that once a month meeting is an opportunity for the directors to give updates about what's happening central office-wise for all the principals to hear, for the superintendent to give updates to all the principals and all the directors, and that's once a month. And we just kind of do a round robin, going around the room, saying what's going on in the central office, so that the principals know what's coming next and can plan and prepare, take notes about what might impact their schools. We also meet once a month with each grade level of principals. So there's an elementary principal meeting, a middle school principal meeting, and a high school principal meeting separately each month. And that is again for principals to come together as a group, hear what is impacting and happening with their grade level, be able to ask questions of directors, and ask question of the director that's in charge of the elementary principals, the high school principals, the middle school principals, and just get information about what's come down the pipe to them, what's important for them to keep their eyes on and thinking about.
Okay. So you've been with Dr. Laws,
Yes.
Dr. Hamrick, Marty Hamrick,
Yes.
and now Mark Bird.
Yes.
Great leaders, tremendous. Let's just fast forward then to talk about Mark Bird a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Bird is a very personable person. He's somebody that you could see sitting down and having coffee with and just talking about, I know his hobbies and his interests, so I'll name those, golf or fishing or being outside hunting. He's a very down-to-earth person, but he very much has a pulse on what needs to be going on in schools. He understands what good teaching looks like, but mostly because of his many years as being a high school principal, he understands what the principalship should look like, and is his leadership and his leadership style, I would say, is similar to mine. And he and I have talked about this, about being a servant leader. We both feel that way. That's our role, that we are here to serve. We are here to serve our principals, our teachers, and our students, and our community. And he and I've had that conversation about how important it is to always remember that we're here to serve. It's not about us. And I affirmed that in myself through talking with him, because I can see that that's how he feels. He wants to. He's the leader of our school system, and he is going to direct us and how we need to move forward. But he's also a servant to our schools and our principals. He's here to support us all, and I admire that in him. That you can step back and realize this isn't about me as being the head man here, but it's about me being the leader to support the folks in the schools and doing the work.
Setting a good example and being a lifelong learner. I want to go back, revisit that again, if you will.
Sure.
Talk about the lifelong learning.
Well, you know, I said earlier, my parents kind of instilled that in us, my family, that they wanted us always to be learning and thinking. And I've always wanted to learn. I loved school, but I also loved learning. I loved finding out about new and different things. I enjoyed being a student, and it's important to me to always be thinking and learning and finding out new information. I enjoy that. I like to learn about new and different things. As a parent, I wanted my son to be a lifelong learner. As a teacher, I wanted my students to always be wanting to learn and not just stop and be happy with what you know now, but always prepare yourself for other things, to be more global, to understand the world, to learn about the world, to learn more than just what you're interested in. Find hobbies, find different facets of life that you can at least be conversational about. You can talk about things with other people.
Good.
So
Wow.
you know, that to me is being a lifelong learner. So you can carry on conversations with anybody because you know a little bit about other things. You may have a passion about something, but don't just stop there. Learn more and provide those opportunities for yourself to be more maybe one day.
You also are a big advocate of empathy.
Yes.
And being a good listener.
Yes.
And genuinely caring about people. Kind of go there, if you will.
Okay. I feel like that's probably one of my strongest characteristics is I do care about people, and I do feel like I am an empathetic person and listener. I try to listen to what people are saying and not to offer advice because I think it's what they should do, but just to be able to hear them. And if they ask for advice, I'll give it, but I'm not going to give somebody advice just because when I listen to them, I want to understand them and where they're coming from. If they ask for advice, then I would give it. But I do feel like I am empathetic. I believe that's something I grew up feeling, that I care about people, and I want people to be happy. Sometimes I do say that can be a fatal flaw because if you want people to be happy, sometimes it's hard to have the hard conversations to help them grow.
Yeah.
But I do want people to be happy. Because I want to help. I want to serve and help, and I care.
Yeah. Dr. Donna Cotton has been a wonderful advocate this morning of enlightening me and our audience. So people have been able to learn a lot today. And I want to thank you for coming here and for the recommendation, and to thank Wilkes Communications and RiverStreet and WIFM for this opportunity. You bring a certain vitality and energy to a room. You're a person that you're an interesting. And so tell us about, if you will, just close with the gratitude that you've been blessed in countless ways in education and children and affecting the lives of families. Okay. Will you do that?
I will. Education's been important to me my whole life, and I'm privileged to be able to impact children's lives and to know that they remember me or remember something from my class or something from the way I treated them as a teacher or a principal, and that I've had a positive influence on them is all I could ask for professionally. You know, personally we do that with our own children, but to know that we can impact other children with a positive adult role model has been an important part of my professional life, and I'm so proud to be part of Wilkes County Schools and all the opportunities I've had being able to be involved in the lives of adults and children alike.
Yeah, I had Mark Bird to embrace me in a special way, you know, that to lift me when I needed and I can always call on him to bring a great person like you and to sit here and share your experience and your hope. So thank you a lot for coming.
Thank you, Gary.
We've been experiencing Dr. Donna Cotton. She'll be the next Chief Academic Officer of Wilkes County Schools. a husband in law enforcement, and a person that gives and shares and cares, and to remember that we always should be seeking and finding ways to serve God, family, and friends, and worthy causes. And again, we thank Dr. Cotton for sharing her vision and her hope for the future. And please join us next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sherry.
Come again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.